Welcome to a WBC Anatomy Special. The intricacies of the mammalian skull have plagued scientists for centuries. What features unite different species? What are the differences between species? And what is the functional significance of these differences? Well, tonight, this dedicated team of scientists will examine a cat skull alongside a human skull for an in-depth comparison. Our team includes Chris McGue, Cody Christopher, Evan Rudder, and Elliot Johns.
And as you can see, the brain cavity of the human, I've taken the top off of the skull, obviously. The brain cavity of the human is proportionally much larger than that of the cat here, as you can see. And that is obviously why humans have advanced and gotten much, more intelligent than cats, because of the large size of the brain cavity that we have here. Another difference between humans and cats is the smaller orbitals of the humans in comparison to the cats size-wise. So as you can see, the cats here have a very large orbital in comparison to the size of the skull, whereas the human's orbital here is proportionally much smaller than the cat's. Ready?
Yeah.
That's because the cats rely on seeing in the dark, being a nocturnal predator that they are. So they need a larger orbital to accommodate the larger eyes they need to see in the dark.
One interesting thing that we discovered about the cat skull and the human skull was that obviously the cat was a quadrupedal creature and the human was a bipedal creature. We first discovered this by examining the foramen magnum of the cat, located here, and the foramen magnum of the human, located here. Additionally, we discovered that the cat was quadrupedal because it had a very pronounced nuchal line and sagittal crest. This was used for muscle attachment to be able to pull its head up away from the ground, and allowed for muscle attachment to the neural processes of the cervical and thoracic vertebrae.
I've noticed some of the differences between the size and the orientation of the two skulls. I want to look at some of the actual bones within the front of each skull. Now, in the human here, you've got the dentary bone with the maxilla right in here. You have the nasal bone right here, the frontal, and then the zygomatic bones on each side of the cheek here. Now, some differences you can notice in the cat. First of all, you don't have the fusion between the frontal and the zygomatic bone here in the cat that you do in the human right here. One other thing is that the cat has a premaxillar bone right here that then has the maxilla along each side with the nasal and then the frontal bone. This accounts for some of the shape differences within the cat, and also shows that the human, basically, the maxilla fuse together with the premaxilla, and that's why the premaxilla is no longer existent in humans.
Skulls of different animals have very different shapes. They have similar structures on the outside of the skull. As you can see, both the human and the cat here have a frontal bone located here on the cat and here on the human. And they have a temporal lobe located here on the cat and here on the human. Also, they have an occipital bone located on the very back of the cat skull, located here, and the back of the human skull located here. You can tell the main difference between the human skull and the cat skull is the
Occipital
occipital
bone,
lobe, based on the location of the spine, where the occipital lobe wraps around the bottom of the skull on the human, where the spine attaches here, and the cat, as the spine is attached posteriorly, the occipital lobe does not wrap around the bottom of the skull. Additionally, the cat and the human have the similarities of the parietal bone located here and here. The cat also has an additional bone located of what is also called the sagittal crest, which is also known as the interparietal bone. And as on the human, you can see here, they have the parietal bone located here.
Teeth of these two mammals here. Now, as we both see that the mammals, all mammals have thecodont teeth, which means that the teeth are set into a socket in the bone there. And also they're heterodont. So if you look at the human, you have different teeth as you go around. You have your molars, your premolars, canines, and incisors. And you also have differentiation between the teeth in the cat with your incisors, canines, and your carnassials and your molars here. Now that is called heterodont teeth, something that all mammals share. However, each of these mammals have evolved with their teeth to show and allow them to eat more efficiently their primary diet. So if we look here, the cat has these very long canine teeth and small incisors that are kind of sharp. And when you put them together, it acts like almost like a knife in the front to cut the meat off. And the canines also are used to tear meat away from the prey. Then you see these teeth here are very sheer, and they're called carnassials, and the molars as well are used to, if you notice here when the mouth closes, shit. So if you notice here when it closes like that, you get an almost knife-like closing there, almost like scissors to tear and shear the meat. This just goes to show that the cat is a predator and its teeth are designed to help it eat and consume its meat. Now if you look at the human here, we have incisors, we have canines, although not as prominent as the cat's canines, and then we have molars, 3 sets of molars and 2 sets of premolars. Now this is to show that we are more omnivorous, and so we have our molars for grinding both meat and plant matter, and we also have our incisors and canines to still tear and rip meat and also plant matter away. But then our molars and premolars are a lot more smooth and flatter than the cat's canine or cat's molars, which goes to show that it is more designed for omnivorous eating.
Is the fact that the choanae differ significantly in the cat and the human. As we see here, the choanae, which allows us to eat and breathe at the same time, is directed more towards the back of the skull in the cat than it is here in the human, where you can see it's directed more downwards. This goes along with the orientation of the cat and the human, as the cat has to breathe more towards the back of the skull into its trachea, which is located behind the skull, rather than beneath the skull in the human.
See that relates to the bipedal, quadrupedal sort of differences you have here is in the cat you have the jugular foramen coming in behind right here, whereas in the human you have the jugular foramen coming down in there. Again, this is coming straight down from where the heart would be, whereas coming more from the back of the head where the heart would be in the cat. Now here we also have the occipital bone for the human. It kind of supports most of the head. Same thing as the cat, although shaped very differently and much smaller just on the back of the head. Again, this is just due to the orientation of the head based on the way each organism walks. Now another interesting thing for the cat here is you have the tympanic bulla sticking out. This is where the auditory ossicles would be housed, and these are much bigger than anything you're going to see on the human. Here you have the auditory meatus coming in the human here, just like you do in the cat here, but you don't have any big protrusions, and this is mostly because the cats are have a more predatory lifestyle and require better senses to chase prey catch mice, anything like that.
We found a huge discovery between these two skulls that will change the face of science forever. So as we see here, if we flip these over, we have 5 bones here: the pre-sphenoid bone, the orbitosphenoid bone, the allospheноid bone, the basisphenoid, and the pterygoid bones. Now these are all separate bones in the cat skull. However, if we look at the human skull, all 5 of these bones have been fused to form one single sphenoid bone. This is truly a great discovery for science, and it just goes to show one of the ways that these animal skulls have been adapted.
Hi kids, I know what you're thinking. These two skulls look exactly the same, right? Well, I hope after today's show you realize the vast amount of similarities and differences we see in the cat skull and the human skull, and how these key differences provide us with critical information that illustrates how these different animals have evolved to be successful in different lifestyles. Thanks for joining.